The digital world never truly sleeps, its pulse beating through the night as millions stay connected, scrolling and sharing, even in the darkest hours. And neither, it seems, does political rivalry, especially when the stakes are high and the personalities larger than life. In the pre-dawn hours of August 22, 2025, a familiar storm brewed on social media as timelines erupted with anticipation and speculation. At exactly 3:17 a.m., Donald Trump unleashed an all-caps tirade aimed squarely at California Governor Gavin Newsom, his words echoing across the digital landscape. He called Newsom a disaster, accused him of turning California into a failed sanctuary, and claimed the state was in chaos, painting a picture of dysfunction and decline. This was no random outburst, it was a calculated escalation in their ongoing feud, a move designed to dominate the day's headlines and force a reaction. Trump's post painted Newsom as an incompetent leader, energizing his base and setting the day's news agenda before most people had even woken up. The timing was classic Trump. A 3 a.m. post bypassing traditional media filters and forcing reporters, pundits, and politicians to scramble for a response. He referenced recent LA protests, blaming Newsom for the unrest and putting the governor on the defensive, as cameras and microphones awaited his reply. The post's raw energy was impossible to ignore, instantly going viral and signaling a new, more volatile phase in their conflict, one that would play out in real time. For millions waking up across the country, it was a stark reminder that in modern politics, the first shot is often fired online, setting the tone for everything that follows. The rivalry between Trump and Newsom had simmered for years, but this attack felt different, more direct, more personal, and more public than ever before. The digital ink was barely dry, but the implications were clear. The battle lines had been redrawn, and the political landscape was shifting beneath everyone's feet. Trump had drawn a line in the sand, daring Newsom to respond, and the world was watching to see who would blink first. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of political discourse, with both men ready to fight for their vision of America. In this new era, the battlefield is a screen, and the war is waged in real time, with every post, comment, and share shaping the narrative. The nation braced for the next move, knowing that in the age of digital politics, the next broadside could come at any moment, from anyone, anywhere. Governor Gavin Newsom decided it was time for a dramatic shift in approach. The old Democratic playbook, once reliable, was now obsolete in a rapidly changing political landscape. Instead of sticking to measured, cautious responses, Newsom chose to fight fire with fire, matching intensity with intensity. His team completely transformed his social media presence, trading lengthy policy papers for sharp, satirical counterpunches that could go viral. Newsom's accounts quickly became platforms for memes, all-caps posts, and rapid-fire videos mocking Trump and his allies, capturing the attention of a new generation. This was a fundamental shift. Democrats could be tough, unapologetic, and Newsom was ready for a political brawl, energizing his base like never before. He saw Trump's influence as an invasive species, one that couldn't be reasoned with, only confronted head-on, without hesitation. Ignoring Trump was no longer an option. Newsom believed boldness and direct confrontation were now necessary for political survival. His new approach was risky, but he argued that passivity and silence were even greater dangers in this climate. The strategy was an experiment, watched closely by his party, as they wondered if this boldness could actually work. For years, Democrats struggled to counter Trump's aggressive style. Newsom offered a new path, one that embraced confrontation and creativity. He bet that in a polarized era, a fighting voice was not just useful, but absolutely essential to rally supporters and win battles. The game had changed, and so had he, adapting his image, his tactics, and his message to meet the moment. Newsom's transformation was a clear signal. Democrats would no longer play by the old rules, but would write new ones for a new era. The political arena now demanded a new kind of combatant, and Newsom was determined to lead the charge into this uncharted territory. Newsom's new style echoed Trump's own tactics, studied, adapted, and turned against him. It was a calculated move, not just mimicry, but a strategic adoption of what worked in the modern political arena. Trump built his brand on direct, relentless social media attacks. Now, Newsom was doing the same, firing off pointed messages and quick retorts that kept his opponents on the defensive. His feeds became a flurry of activity, calling out Republicans and creating viral moments. Every post was crafted to spark conversation, draw attention, and rally his base, making sure his voice was impossible to ignore. Newsom adopted sharp nicknames and memorable phrases, mirroring Trump's infamous style. These labels stuck in the public's mind, shaping perceptions and dominating headlines. His team was ready with rapid responses, ensuring no attack went unanswered. They monitored the digital landscape constantly, prepared to counter any narrative that threatened their momentum. Visually, Newsom's digital campaign embraced bold, graphic-heavy content, recognizing that style matters as much as substance. Eye-catching visuals and punchy slogans became their signature, designed to cut through the noise. Even Steve Bannon, Trump's ally, warned not to underestimate Newsom. He was the only Democrat fighting back effectively. Bannon saw in Newsom a rare willingness to engage in the same bare-knuckle brawling that defined Trump's rise. Newsom wasn't just complaining, he was competing for control of the narrative. He seized every opportunity to set the agenda, refusing to let his opponents dictate the terms of debate. The mechanics were the same: media dominance, celebrity power, and projecting strength. Both leaders understood that in today's politics, visibility and spectacle are as important as policy. But Newsom framed his aggression as a defense of democratic norms, not just personal crusade. He positioned himself as a guardian of institutions, channeling his energy into a larger cause. By adopting these tactics, he wasn't becoming Trump. He was proving the tools of modern combat aren't exclusive to one side. The playbook was open to anyone willing to use it. Newsom was fighting for his political life with the weapons of the era, adapting to survive in a landscape where only the boldest voices break through. The line between strategy and spectacle blurred, as every move was both a calculated tactic and a performance for the cameras. In this new landscape, imitation was a form of survival. To win, you had to play the game as fiercely as your rivals, or risk being left behind. The conflict exploded when President Trump deployed National Guard troops to Los Angeles, without a request from Governor Newsom or the mayor. This wasn't disaster relief, it was a show of federal force to enforce hardline immigration policies. The White House claimed California was failing to cooperate with federal agents, justifying the deployment as a last resort. Supporters saw it as Trump fulfilling his promise to crack down on sanctuary cities. Critics called it a dangerous overreach, violating state sovereignty and blurring the line between military and law enforcement. Newsom and California leaders condemned the move as political intimidation. The deployment escalated a policy dispute into a constitutional crisis. The sight of federal troops on LA streets against the state's wishes was chilling for many. This was no longer just a war of words, it was a direct confrontation over the balance of power. The stakes had never been higher. The nation watched as the conflict moved from tweets to the streets. The National Guard's arrival in Los Angeles ignited massive protests. Thousands flooded the streets, viewing the troops as an occupying force trampling their rights. Demonstrations shut down freeways and targeted federal buildings, especially those detaining immigrants. The message was clear: the troops were not welcome. Tensions soared as peaceful marches turned into volatile confrontations. Law enforcement responded with tear gas and rubber bullets, escalating the chaos. Images of burning vehicles and standoffs dominated the news, transforming LA into a war zone. Newsom condemned the federal intervention as the root cause of the crisis, accusing Trump of political theater. Defense officials warned that if unrest continued, Marines could be deployed, raising fears of military force against citizens. The protests became a national symbol of resistance to Trump's policies. The burning cars and tear gas were a physical manifestation of the political firestorm. The chaos in LA was a direct result of the escalating feud. The city's turmoil reflected the nation's deep divisions. The consequences of political brinkmanship were now painfully real. The events in Los Angeles sent shockwaves nationwide, deepening the political divide. Trump doubled down, defending the deployment as crucial for national security and threatening charges against state officials. His supporters saw strength, critics saw authoritarianism. Prominent Democrats rallied behind Newsom, calling Trump's actions a dangerous slide toward tyranny. Legal challenges mounted, shifting the debate from immigration to the core principles of democracy. On Capitol Hill, rhetoric grew toxic. Loyalists demanded punishment for Newsom, while moderates grew uneasy. The country split into camps, each convinced the other was destroying America. Strange alliances formed, and the fallout spread beyond California. The Trump-Newsom feud became a national proxy war for the soul of the country. Every politician and citizen was forced to take a side. The nation was watching, more divided than ever. As political drama unfolded in LA, a global crisis brewed. Trump's aggressive trade wars, especially with China, triggered warnings from the World Bank about a looming recession. The much-touted China trade deal was exposed as mostly symbolic, offering little real benefit. Critics argued the administration's erratic approach hurt American workers and businesses. Domestically, the National Guard deployment came with a hefty price tag, raising questions about fiscal responsibility. Millions spent on a politically motivated operation fueled criticism of wasted resources. International partners grew wary of America's reliability, and markets turned volatile. The World Bank's warnings signaled that America first could leave America isolated. The economic fallout was less dramatic but just as consequential. The administration's disruptive style had global and domestic costs. The National Guard deployment became a constitutional flashpoint. State and city leaders called it a violation of state sovereignty, igniting a fierce legal battle. The American system is built on federalism. Trump's move was seen as a direct challenge to that balance. The Posse Comitatus Act generally prohibits military use for domestic law enforcement. Critics argued Trump's order was illegal. Lawsuits flew, turning the courts into the next battleground. This was the culmination of years of tension between California and the Trump administration. Newsom had led the resistance. Trump saw California as defiant. The deployment transformed a policy dispute into a fundamental clash over who holds power within a state. Rhetoric escalated, with threats of prosecution and accusations of constitutional betrayal. The struggle over LA's streets became a symbol of America's bitter fight over the balance of power. When asked about his transformation, Newsom was blunt. The game had changed, and so had he. He pointed to Trump's norm-breaking style as the reason for his own shift. Newsom argued that traditional methods were useless against such an opponent. He justified his combative approach as necessary to defend his state's values. The old rules, civility and compromise, no longer worked in this environment. Newsom's strategy was a calculated adaptation, not a dissent. He believed voters wanted leaders who would fight, not just debate. The Trump-Newsom conflict was more than a personality clash. It was a debate over how politics should be conducted in a polarized nation. Newsom's fight signaled a new era. Democrats would no longer bring a policy paper to a political knife fight. The confrontational, social media-driven style may be the new permanent reality of American politics.